thank you all for being here. I am Sofia Parker. As I was telling them, I am a licensed wildlife rehabilitator with Otter Creek Wildlife Rescue out of Addison. So what we do is we take in injured and orphaned birds and animals that need help from anything from it was hit by a car, it was caught by someone's outdoor cat, it was poisoned by rodenticide poisoning, rat poisoning, just an orphaned baby bird that fell out of its nest and can't be put back for whatever reason, etc. You okay? So that's a little bit about my background. I'm here on behalf of Protect Our Wildlife Vermont, which is another Vermont nonprofit run by Brenna Galdenzi. And basically the goal of Protect Our Wildlife is to work on changing the laws in Vermont to be more with the times and make Vermont a better place for wildlife, because currently our laws are very, very unprotecting of Vermont's wildlife. So we're working to change that. Hey guys, how's it going? Come on in. Dry off, make yourselves comfortable. So today we're going to be learning about coyote families. And if you guys have any questions throughout, feel free to raise your hands or anything like that. So I was just telling them I'm here with an organization called Protect Our Wildlife Vermont, that it does a lot of different things. It actually has grants for wildlife rehabilitators. It works to lobby and change some of the laws to make them more humane for wildlife, and outlaw some of the more archaic practices like hole trapping and things like that. Hey, come on in. And today we are learning about coyotes, which are a species that are unfortunately very demonized in Vermont. So we're going to learn about some of the actual facts about them, as well as why there are so many misconceptions. And if you guys have any questions, seriously, raise your hand. Feel free to shout out in the middle or anything. It's a small group. It's super informal. I'm just glad you guys are all here. Thank you for braving the crazy weather to be with us. So we were, excuse me to the people who came earlier, we were already talking about this, but coyote family is made up of a dominant alpha male, who's the father, and then an alpha female, who's the mother, and they are the leaders of the pack, and then their offspring. They are the only ones who mate in the pack, and they actually do so just once a year. So the mother, the father, and the yearlings actually raise the pups. So the older siblings from the year before actually help to raise the new pups every year. And as the pups grow, the father continues to bring home food to feed both his mate and his young. So the mom mostly focuses on being in the den with the pups, nursing, keeping them safe, all of that. And then the father goes back and scavenges and hunts to find food for them. And the pups stay in the den until around 6 weeks old, at which point they start to simply get too big for it and also to want to have a higher activity level. So at that point they come out of the den and start to forage, look around, explore the world around them. And similar to puppies, I don't know if any of you guys have ever had dog puppies, but coyote pups are very, very similar to dog puppies. So they play and stalk in order to learn how to hunt for the future, and their mom will actually bury food, both food that she's hunted and food that she's scavenged, for them to be able to dig up and start looking for food.
Sophia,
Yep.
Are you going to talk about dens? I mean, what's a den like?
That's a very good question, yes. So a den can actually be made anywhere. I talk about it a little bit more later in the presentation, but coyotes are extremely adaptable. So it can be anything from a big opening in the ground under where a hollow tree is to under someone's deck. And a lot of the time in cities where people have encroached on their natural habitat, they will adapt and they will make a den underneath your shed or even underneath your porch. And that leads to a lot of conflicts because people don't tend to love coyotes under their deck, especially if they have chickens or something like that, or have misinformation and are fearful that the coyotes would hurt them. So a den can really be anywhere that seems like a safe place underground or in a secluded place with some cover. where a mom and pups will fit? So very good question, but it can really be anywhere. So this coyote pup was actually orphaned a few years ago in Vermont. Unfortunately, its mom was most likely shot by a hunter or trapped by a trapper. And this was actually one of the lucky ones who was found by a kind Good Samaritan and brought to a wildlife rehabber. It was brought to Medora, who's one of the rehabbers in Starksboro, who specializes in coyotes, foxes, bobcats, and the bigger predator species. Can you guys all hear, by the way?
Yes, thank
Good.
you.
If anyone can't, just yell out, tell me to speak up, okay? So Vermont only has about 20 all-volunteer rehabbers who tend to countless sick, orphan, and injured wildlife. My mom and I are two of them. We take in mostly birds and small mammals. How many of you guys in this room have brought a critter to a wildlife rehabber? I know you guys have. Okay, so a lot of you have. That's awesome.
To you.
Yes, I remember. I'm so glad you're here. Your little finch went free. So he's doing great. What all? Just like shout out. What all did you guys rescue?
Squirrels.
Nice, good job.
Yeah, I'm with her. Squirrels.
A gosling? Oh, that's awesome. Who did you bring it to? Lynette or Sherry?
To Vince.
To Vin's. Wonderful. That's awesome. Yeah, they're the biggest wildlife rehab center.
Yeah, we didn't know how to find anybody else that would be coyotes.
Yeah, there's a whole list. So you can actually Google licensed wildlife rehabbers Vermont, and the Fish and Wildlife Department has a whole list of them.
Oh, cool.
So, but yes, Vince does a great job. Yes.
From New Jersey, skunks.
Nice. Good job.
We were offered in this package of 4 that people had seen. They were just there and they watched them play.
Aw.
And then they continued with their walk and found the dead skunk.
Oh, so they've been
And so they
orphaned.
thought, gee, is that the mother or,
Mhm.
you know, what? So they went back later the next morning and they took 2 of them and they went back to see how the others were and they were not.
Yeah. So you were able to save
So
those
they
two.
brought all 4 of them. My husband was about to come up to, can't think what state it was in. He's going to be teaching at Woods Hole, sort of.
Yeah.
He was going to be teaching the children the teachers that were up at Woods Hole. And so, of course, these skunks were a big
Yeah.
hit.
Yeah.
And they were so tiny, their eyes were still closed.
Oh my
And
goodness.
we had them in a tissue box on a little low kindergarten table and then Lily was going to be teaching it. And we were upstairs getting the classroom ready and smelled the skunk. And the little thing's eyes were still closed.
Oh my
But they
goodness.
managed to get out of the box and one of them fell off the little kindergarten table to the
Oh,
floor.
no.
No big injury, but
Yeah.
startled and let loose. And here their eyes were still shut and they could
Oh
make
my
that skunk
goodness,
smell.
that's amazing. Yeah, so you guys, it sounds like you guys have a lot of experiences of saving different creatures and bringing them to rehabbers. One thing with skunks, so in Vermont, skunks, raccoons, foxes, and bats are classified as rabies vector species, so you actually need an additional license to rehab them, which Medora, the one who takes coyotes, also has, and then there's 6 other rehabbers who have that. No, 5 others, 6 including Medora. So if you guys find one of those species, the biggest thing is to wear gloves when you're handling the animal, because there's actually a rule in Vermont where if there's a rabies vector species that's been handled with someone who's unvaccinated for rabies with their bare hands, they actually have to kill it and test it for rabies. So many kind, wonderful people pick up these creatures with their bare hands, and then if they don't know, the state tells them to actually kill them and test them for rabies. So the state makes the game warden do that. So biggest thing is when in doubt, definitely wear gloves to protect those animals. But most creatures can be picked up no problem, but it's always good if you find an animal that needs help or that may need help to immediately reach out to a rehabber. And if it's in danger, detain it. So thank you for sharing your stories of the things that you've saved. That's awesome. So you guys ready for a really cute video? Let's see. Oh, wait. So that was actually this summer, one of the babies that Medora raised this summer. This poor baby was orphaned. Its mom was killed and it was brought to Medora, and she's actually having to teach it how to howl. So she's howling and then it's responding to her. Just like, who knows what she's teaching it to say. At least she's teaching it to say something. Okay, there. So coyote families are very, very devoted to each other. The mother and the father are both equally devoted to their babies, just in different roles. This father coyote actually suffered from multiple gunshot wounds inflicted by inhumane hunters. This wasn't in Vermont. But he ended up surviving and having a broken leg and multiple injuries, but he ended up being okay and raising his pups and continuing to provide for them despite being in a lot of pain himself. So they're extremely loyal creatures, very, very loyal to their families and their packs. So this, we were talking about this a little bit earlier also. Coyotes will sometimes allow a transient coyote to enter the pack. More than half of coyotes live in packs and the others are transients. And transients can actually have a range of up to around 100 miles because they just travel from one home range to another. And normally the packs do allow them in their territory, but they don't get the same protection as members of the pack.
Is a transient a male who doesn't fit in somehow?
So they can be males or females, actually. We don't know. That's a question I can write down and ask to our wildlife biologist, but I don't believe that it's fully known why some become transients and some don't. Good question. So coyotes actually have dog and wolf DNA. As coyotes spread through southern Canada, they occasionally interbred with wolves. And you can see some of the size charts for western coyotes out west and eastern coyotes, which we have here, and then how they compare to two different breeds of dog. And domestic dogs actually can breed with coyotes and wolves, but it's not very common for dogs to successfully breed with coyotes because female coyotes actually only go into heat once a year. And so it's very rare that an unneutered dog would happen to interact with her during that period. And if pups were born in the wild to a female coyote and they were part dog, they likely wouldn't survive because it's very difficult growing up as a coyote in the wild, and most domestic dogs couldn't handle that. But there are coyotes out there with dog DNA and dogs out there with coyote DNA. So coyote packs have a home range. So remember I said transients can go up to 100 miles, but the actual home range is more like 4 to 8 miles, and that's where an individual pack will go. And they will live anywhere as long as there's food and a safe place to rest. So you can even see coyotes in Central Park in New York City. And pup season is the only time that they'll actually use a den. And like I was saying before, the den can be anything. It can be in the woods, in your shed, in an old culvert or a rock wall, anywhere that they feel safe.
So then where do they like to sleep when they don't have a den?
So normally they sleep out in the open. They'll try to hide in the woods or a field or something like that, but they don't use actual cover like a den anytime except for pup season. So, but they are pretty reclusive. I mean, I've never stumbled on a coyote taking a nap, but I assume they go like deep into the woods or something like that, or in a field of high grass. Good question. So like I was saying before, coyotes are highly adaptable. They can live in suburban areas or urban areas. And the abundant food supply in urban areas actually makes for a good habitat. The only problem with that is people. So people often see a coyote in their space and freak out and decide that they want it gone, they want to kill it, they want it not there anymore. Also, people do things like use rat poison and other things, which we'll talk about later, which poses a big problem for them. But it is okay to see coyotes in your neighborhood. For the vast most part, they're not going to cause any problems for you. They're just trying to survive. So what do you guys think coyotes eat? You can just shout out some ideas.
Mice?
Rabbits? Yep.
Anything.
They will if they have the opportunity, yes.
Garbage.
Garbage. They can eat garbage. It depends on what kind. But if there's meat scraps or something, they might. What else do you guys think?
Apples?
Yep, you're exactly right. That's one of my slides. Yeah, so let's see some of the things they eat. Apples, there we go. Berries. Sometimes people will have berry bushes in their yards, and we'll see the coyotes gently picking berries off of their bushes. Greens, believe it or not, like grass and even like garden vegetables. Insects they'll eat. Meat, like any kind of meat that they can hunt, and fish also. So they will hunt, and then they also scavenge. So roadkill, animals that have died, things like that. And even like you said, if you were to throw a hamburger in the trash and a coyote were to find it, they would eat that too.
Do they go in the water and fish?
They do actually, yes. So they will actually go in the water and grab fish if they can, or if there's dead fish washed up, they'll love that. So they are true omnivores, just like we are, which means that they eat foods from all the different food groups. And they're also opportunistic omnivores, so they eat whatever is available. So what they would eat in the winter would be very different from what they would eat in the spring versus midsummer or fall. So this is actually one picking, I don't know what that kind of tree is, but it's picking something off of that tree. There's one. This one is actually in Vermont, in Lamoille County, and there it is running away with an apple. So this is about the time of year now that you might see, if you have an apple tree, you might see a coyote running away with an apple from your tree too.
Excuse me, you didn't mention birds. Are they not bird hunters?
So they would eat a bird if they had the opportunity, but because birds can fly, they will not usually go for them. Gray foxes can climb trees, so they're more likely to grab a bird at night, whereas coyotes, it's not a significant part of their diet. But if there's a bird that can't fly, or obviously something like a chicken that's unsecured, they will go for that. So it's very important to, if you have free-range chickens, obviously there's a good chance that if a coyote walks through your yard, it will become prey for them. It depends entirely on where you live, if you have a dog, things like that. So like my mom has lived in Addison for 25 years now, has always had free-range chickens, and she's never had one taken by a coyote, but she also has always had a dog or two, and she always puts them in a predator-proof coop at night. So where she lives and with her particular situation, it's okay, but if you have a pack of coyotes that's around, it might be worth investing in a run or something for your chickens, because they're opportunistic. They will eat them if they can. A lot of people think that they'll eat outdoor cats. This is a possibility. It does happen. It's not the easiest food for them because cats have claws, cats are fierce, cats have teeth. Coyotes are hungry, so they'll eat whatever is easiest and safest for them to eat. So same with deer. People always talk about coyotes ravaging the deer population. They will eat a deer. They'll kill a deer that's very sick. Unfortunately, they will kill a young deer if it's not with its parent. But they're not going to go for a healthy deer unless they're starving, because they're very likely to get kicked in the face or get their spine broken or something by a deer. So they're going to go for the easiest and most accessible food.
Are they pack hunters then, or single hunters?
They can be pack hunters. It can honestly go either way. So they sometimes will use cooperation, but often a single coyote will kill something. Like for instance, if it's a male bringing it back to his pups, often it will just be one. And we also do recommend, this is more from a wildlife rehabber perspective, we do really appreciate it if people keep their cats in, only because probably about 75% of the birds and small mammals that we get are mangled by people's cats. So we see it all the time, probably like 5 to 10 calls a day, all summer long, when the babies are fledging and babies are starting to leave nests. Cats are an invasive species that we brought in, and you know, wild cats that are hungry are going to go, just like a coyote is going to go for the easiest thing, it's going to eat it and it's going to be satiated. Whereas our kitties are going to go out and they still have that instinct, but they'll just be out killing things for fun all day long and not eating them. And then they'll come back and eat a bowl of fancy feast, and it'll be a great day for them.
And they'll get lots of love for it.
Yes, exactly, but not so much for the wildlife. So I have 4 rescue kitties. They're all indoor only. People can build patios for them or take them out on harnesses. There's lots of solutions that don't let them kill wildlife. And then also they're safer from coyotes in a small percent, but also a lot of other things. Cars need humans. Yes.
Is there a group that's really pursuing this? Because it just drives me nuts. In other words, I still run into people who they'll all say, oh, my cat doesn't keep it. But they all, and I say, well, that's what they all say.
Right.
So is there any group that's really pursuing this?
That is a really good question. I'm going to write that down on my notes on my phone and
Maybe my next mission.
I love that. You should start doing that. I don't believe there's a specific group in Vermont, although all the rehabbers are definitely petitioning for
Or
it.
if you could check and we could
Yeah.
either get the rehabbers or the Humane Society or people on board, because it's just, people do not realize, they love birds, but they don't realize that it is the #1 danger for birds.
Yeah,
Or
it
cats.
absolutely is. Yeah.
And the cats don't eat the food.
Right,
I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah.
at least the coyote needs to eat.
Exactly. And that's the thing, they're real predators. Yes, did you have something to add?
Yes, there's an organization called American Bird Conservancy, ABC.
Okay. I'm going to write that
Which
down
has
too.
a program of cats indoors.
Really? Okay. American Bird Conservancy. Awesome. Thank you so much. So nothing locally probably, aside from just different rehabbers and organizations.
We're going to start one.
I love it. Please do. Well, I'll help in any way I can. That's awesome. Thank you guys for bringing that up. The average lifespan of a coyote in the wild is 6 to 8 years, whereas in captivity they can live twice as long. And that's just because there is a lot of dangers in the wild. That's the case for many, many species of animals, but unfortunately in Vermont it's especially true of coyotes because of humans. So many pups die during their first year, and typically only 2 or 3 from a litter of 6 actually make it to adulthood, sadly. So there's a bunch of myths about coyotes that are part of what we hear a lot in Vermont. So you guys can just raise your hands if any of you have heard someone say this. Have any of you guys heard that coyotes lure dogs to their death and that's the reason we should kill them? No, surprisingly, okay. Normally a lot of people raise their hands. So there is definitely a myth that, oh, coyotes are bad, they want to kill your dog, they're going to taunt your dog into coming into their territory and they're going to kill it. That is not really true. Coyotes generally are afraid of dogs, or at very least respect dogs. I mentioned how my mom has a dog, and that's one of the big reasons why we think coyotes don't go after her chickens. Normally they will respect that area as your dog's home range, and they don't want to be part of that. They don't want to fight with your dog. So a dog that enters a coyote territory, especially if it tries to go after members of the pack, go after the pups, go too close to the den, can be attacked because it's being treated as an intruder. If a coyote sees a dog chasing his mate, he will chase the dog off, but it's not because they have any interest in killing dogs. It's just because they're trying to protect themselves. So it's a really sad thing that happens a lot. We have hunters who use hounds to pursue coyotes and pursue bears and things like that. And it's really cruel both to the creatures that are being pursued and also to the dogs. Usually the dogs are starved, in really bad shape, and they can get scratched by a bear or bitten by a coyote too, that are just trying to protect themselves. And they use radio collars for them, so the hunters don't have to actually be in the physical location of the dogs. So there have been a lot of cases of, people's pet dogs or cats getting attacked, even people getting attacked by these dogs because the owners are not actually around to control them. There's another myth that says coyotes celebrate the kill by howling. So I don't know if you guys have heard that, but a lot of people are like, oh, they're celebrating that deer they just killed when they hear coyotes howling at night. But that's not really true. I usually, when I do presentations for kids, I ask them all to list like their favorite snacks. So what is your favorite food in the back? What's your name in the blue dress? What's your favorite snack? What is it?
Pizza.
Pizza, okay. So imagine you are walking through the woods and you don't have a fridge full of food, you don't have a fridge full of snacks, you don't have cabinets full of snacks. You only get pizza maybe once a week. And imagine you're walking through the woods and you find a pizza and it's just enough for you and your parents or just enough for you and your best friend. Are you going to yell out? Are you going to be like, hey everybody, there's pizza over here. Guys, there's pizza. No, you're going to want to save that pizza. If you're really nice, you'll share it with your family and your friends. But you don't want to tell everyone that you just found this food that you worked so hard to get. So the howling is actually a language. There are many different, I forget the exact statistic. Is it on the next? Yes, there's around a dozen coyote vocalizations, and it's a language, just like how we talk. So we may not know what most of those mean, but they know what it means. And it can be for courtship, like for mating rituals, for food, for just general communication, for fending off intruders, but they're not out there celebrating that they just killed someone. And coyotes are generally vocal when greeting family members or reinforcing territory. So it can be a warning, it can be a social thing, the same thing as people use language for. And one or two coyotes are often mistaken for a pack due to something called the bow jest effect. So have you ever heard like a whole, what sounds like a whole pack of coyotes out in the woods at night? Yeah. So believe it or not, that could only be one or two coyotes, but because of the way that their specific vocalizations carry, it can sound like a whole bunch. So here's a few examples. Another myth is that coyotes are pests. I bet you guys have heard this one at least in some capacity. They're pests. All they do is eat our chickens. We just need to kill them all. I hear that all the time. I see that all the time on Facebook. All the time people say that in Vermont. But I would ask you, why are coyotes pests? And does that mean great horned owls are also pests? Does that mean bobcats are pests? Are lynx pests? Are human hunters pests? Like, coyotes are just out there. I mean, that's a different topic. Are ethical human hunters that only kill what they need for food pests? Things like that. But just like bobcats, lynx, foxes, things like that, they are just out there trying to survive. And coyotes, like we talked about before, unlike many of those others, are not even true carnivores. So while a lot of those animals only eat meat or only eat creatures that they kill, that's not even all of what coyotes eat. And they actually play an essential role in their environments by maintaining healthy ecosystems. So they eat a lot of mice and rats and things that we think of as pests. And they also eat a lot of animals that are already dead, called carrions. So things that have been hit by cars, things that have died of natural causes. So they actually help clean up the environment. And coyote attacks on humans are basically unheard of in Vermont. The only cases really where coyotes attack humans are if the coyotes are rabid. So rabies, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with rabies. It's a virus that ultimately affects the brain of any mammal, but an opossum actually can get rabies. Opossums' body temperatures are too low. But if you are rabid, and this would even be a human if it had rabies, the virus basically takes over your brain and turns you into a zombie that just wants to bite things because that's how it's spread. So if a coyote has rabies, yes, it will attack humans, it will attack anything. And in that case, the only thing to do is call a game warden and they'll humanely euthanize it. But aside from that, coyotes don't want to be near people. They mostly avoid humans. They can coexist very well with humans. It's us who have a problem coexisting. The exceptions to this would obviously be chickens, which if you have chickens, ducks, geese, things like this, you need to take steps to protect them. Otherwise, they will unfortunately very easily become victims to coyotes, or bobcats, or birds of prey, or anything else. Also, if you have a very, very small dog, it may not recognize it as a dog, like your little 5-pound fluffy cute thing. It might not totally recognize it as a canine, and it could harm that dog. But I'm not going to go after you.
That sign reminds me, I was in San Francisco visiting my sister when we went to the Botanical Garden. They actually have a sign just like that in
Oh, do they?
San Francisco Botanical Garden saying, please do not approach the coyotes.
Interesting. Did you see coyotes while you were
I
there?
did not.
Yeah. No, and that makes sense.
I wasn't really in the Botanical Garden as a coyote. It's fine.
Makes sense. And yeah, that's because they don't want the same thing that happens with alligators in Florida. If you feed them, they will start seeing humans as a source of food. And at that point, they will come up to humans, endangering them. And if they get a certain level of tame, it could even endanger humans. So you don't, except in special circumstances, you don't really want to associate yourself as a food for wildlife, especially predator species. You're not doing that for yourself favors. But yeah, they have so many opportunities in Vermont. Think of Vermont. We're always hiking, skiing, doing all this stuff in the woods. And how often do you hear of negative interactions between coyotes and humans? Hardly ever. Unfortunately, we are the #1 threat to coyotes. This is one of the things in the back of trucks that hunters keep hounds in, is what's in the picture. Thanks to Protect Our Wildlife Vermont, the organization sponsoring this presentation, they did make coyote killing contests illegal, and they also helped put a ban on wanton waste, which is basically killing large number of things not even on your property and not using the bodies in any way. So unfortunately, when I was growing up in the backwoods of Addison as a kid, I would be hiking through the woods with my dog, and sometimes I would stumble on a pile of 5 or 6 coyotes just lying to rot in the woods. And they would have just been coyotes that someone killed, not for any purpose other than just killing them. Maybe they thought they were eliminating some sort of threat or pest. Probably they just did it for fun. So you can we're still working on some of the laws because it's not always very well enforced, not always very clearly written, and there's still a lot of room for people to just do harm for the sake of doing harm. But Protect Our Wildlife has made huge strides in making Vermont a safer place for wildlife, and they're definitely not giving up anytime soon.
Thank you.
So that's not, I actually can't take credit for that. That's mostly Brenna Galdenzi, who's the head of Protect Our Wildlife. She's constantly in the State House in Montpelier, writing things, crusading for that. So huge shout out to her on that. And then unfortunately also leg hold traps are huge. Do you guys all know what that is? Yeah, they're basically these traps that people bait them with food that's appealing to a large variety of creatures, and then when they step on it, it clamps shut on their paw and they get stuck on it. Vermont Fish and Wildlife tries to market them as humane. They are not in any way humane, even if the paw doesn't break from the impact. They struggle to try to get out of it, and the law only requires them to be checked once every 24 hours. So you can imagine these poor wild creatures are stuck. They often, I don't want to get too graphic, but they often end up losing the limb that's stuck in it, or worse, and then they can be killed in pretty much any way after they're killed. So that's another thing that Brenna and Protect Our Wildlife are working actively to change. because it's a very archaic way of killing things and very indiscriminate. There's cats, there's dogs, even kids can get stuck in anything can get stuck in this. And then also just cars, which often isn't people's fault. You know, if a coyote runs right in front of your car and you can't stop, that's another thing that can happen to them. Another big one, which it doesn't say here, are rodenticides. So how many of you guys have seen the little black bait boxes outside? They're just these little black boxes with a hole about the size for a mouse or rat to go into. So what those are filled with is rat poison. And how there's two different kinds of rat poison. One is anticoagulant, so it basically stops you from clotting, your blood from clotting. The other is bromethylene, which is a neurotoxin, and kills you the way that a neurotoxin kills you. So unfortunately, neither of these are humane in any way. It's a super slow, painful way for the mouse or rat to die. And it also, as they're dying, it makes them very, very slow, which makes them easy targets for a hungry coyote, fox, owl, domestic cat, wild cat, domestic dog, literally any predator species that hunts weasels, and then they have the same fate. So we actually currently are treating a great horned owl from Benson that had this. We had another that was a baby who arrived almost dead from it. Both of them survived. We've had others that did not. And the bromethylene, the neurotoxin one, there's actually no treatment for. You can treat the other one with vitamin K. But so ironically, the best way to control mouse and rat populations are with these predator species. And we are choosing to use a way that not only harms the mice and rats, but harms all the predator species that would do our job for us. So that's another thing we're working to control in Vermont. Other threats are, like I said, poison, and then parasites, mange, and heartworm, all the things that could happen to our dogs, but we would take our dog to the vet for. Sadly, there's no vets in the wild. So those ones aren't really humans' faults, although mange is strongly exacerbated by rat poison, actually. So, and then there's a lot of...
I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, you're good. So mange, it's been shown that mange lowers the immune system, and also, rodenticides lower the immune system,
Okay.
which makes it easier for mange to take over, and then also makes it easier for secondary infections to happen, because mange mites are little mites that chew at the skin and chew at the hair follicles, but it leaves open wounds, so if you can't clot well, you'll start bleeding more, then they'll get more infected, and your immune system can't fight it off as well. So there's actually a strong correlation between those things. And then the last slide is some ways that we can easily coexist with coyotes. So there are a lot of simple steps that we can take to prevent coyotes from being attracted to your home. So if you don't want coyotes in your yard, that's completely fair. It doesn't inherently mean that we have to kill all the coyotes within a 10-mile radius. And in fact, as I was telling a few of the people who came early, there's actually studies to show that killing coyotes actually boosts the population, not the opposite. Because if you kill, it's for a lot of different reasons, but one reason is if you kill the alpha male and female, then all of a sudden the whole pack is out of whack. And ones who normally wouldn't breed at all are all breeding to try to fill that in because you just messed up the natural pack structure. So killing coyotes actually boosts the number of coyotes. So even if your goal was to reduce the number and eliminate coyotes, it's not going to work. What you can do is wildlife-proof your garbage in sturdy containers with tight-fitting lids, just like you would for bears or any other species, raccoons, etc. Don't leave pet food outside because they don't know the difference. They can't read signs for cats only. So if they see a big bowl of free food, they're going to take it. Clear away brush and dense weeds near buildings that they could think would be a good place for a den. Close off crawl spaces that they could think would be a good place for a den. If you frequently see a coyote in your yard, and this applies to a lot of species like bears too, you can go out and get a pot and a pan and bang them together, or get a metal ladle and bang it against a pot, make a loud noise, yell, play a loud radio, and they won't want anything to do with it. Basically haze them. You can do an air horn, or even spray them with a hose. Anything that's not going to hurt them, but shows them that it's not a pleasant place for them to be. So that is about it for the actual presentation. If you guys have any questions, comments, stories you want to share, anything at all, go ahead. And if I don't know the answer, I can forward it to our wildlife biologist, who is a member of Protect Our Wildlife, or ask around. Yes?
I noticed from one of your early slides about the size comparison that the eastern coyote is larger than the western. And is there research on why that is?
That is a super good question. I'm going to write that down and send it to our wildlife biologist. And I wonder how to best get it to you. Do you want to put your email down there?
Yes, I have that on there.
Yeah, perfect. Or you can even email info@protectourwildlife for that.
Good.
But let me write it down as well. So why are eastern larger than western? Okay. Awesome.
I thought it was, I that they mated with larger dogs on their way to the east.
So yeah, so that might be it. I know that they did mate with wolves as they came up through Canada, but I just don't know because I would think the western ones would as well because we have wolves out west, so that's what I'm not exactly sure about.
Yeah.
But
I thought it was the dogs, but that might just be one of those tales about things.
no, it definitely could be that they bred with larger domestic dogs. You mean?
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to ask Jennifer that. And if you want to just list your email, anyone who wants to get the answers to the questions, if you want to just list your email and I'll make sure they send those to you. Yes?
I think I might have a clue to what happened. So I think the coyote were cleared out of the northeastern part of the country. They were, there's a word, extirpated. Anyway, so then what happened is the western coyote immigrated or moved in, mating with the wolf population. So we've got that movement this way. As you compare the northeastern coyote, let's say, with the coyote from the south, they're a smaller coyote. So it's that, I think that mating and mixing with the wolf population coming down into New England. But this is my knowledge, and we need
that makes a lot of
authorities.
sense. No, that makes a lot of sense. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I bet that is what it is. Yes?
Do you have a sense of the population in the state of Vermont?
That is a super good question. Do you want me to Google it for you real quick?
Yeah,
Because I don't know off the top of my head, and I don't want to give you a wrong number.
Okay.
So, 1 second.
Yeah, I was just curious. I know the state does a lot with bear, deer, turkeys,
Yeah.
and of course those are game animals, but I wasn't sure if there was, anyone had an estimated population for coyotes.
Yeah, so it says it fluctuates between 4,500 and 8,000 with fewer animals in the population during winter, I think because life is difficult for them and a lot of pups don't survive their first winter. But it doesn't sound like they're exactly tracking the numbers that clearly if there's that much of a gap, but that's what I found.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was as of this year, it says. Thank you, good question. Yes?
What is the current legislation about hunting and season? I might have missed it, you might have mentioned it earlier on.
So unfortunately, coyotes are currently completely unprotected in terms of season. They can be hunted 365 days of the year. The only differences of that, the only exceptions are that coyote killing contests are now banned, and that was directly because of Protect Our Wildlife. So they used to actually have competitions saying like money for the most coyotes killed, the biggest coyote, like that ridiculous stuff.
So now I can just do it unofficially.
Something like that, yeah. So there's no longer like cash incentives for it, basically. And then also the wanton waste law means that you can't just decide that you and a group of your friends are going to drive 15 miles from your home and walk through the woods and kill as many coyotes as you can and leave them there. So you can still kill them if you can say you're going to use their pelts or if you're going to eat their meat, which people I don't think do. But you can technically make that argument, so that's what I mean about it's really hard to actually like enforce those things. But and then also if you can make an argument that they're on your property and you feel threatened by them, because unfortunately that's the law in Vermont. Any wild animal that you feel threatened by, with the exception of migratory birds, you can kill on your property. So that's another thing.
And so
But-
POW is trying to work to help the coyotes.
Yes.
Okay.
POW is
Through
trying to work to
legislation.
make
Okay.
stronger regulations
Okay.
in terms of a hunting season, having to report how many you're killing, banning lead hold trapping, banning or limiting the use of rodenticides, a lot of different things. It's unfortunately very slow progress because the Fish and Wildlife Department does not particularly care about these species. They're much more interested in special interest groups like hunters and trappers
Sure.
because that's where they get their money. But, yes.
Does the wanton weight still apply to animals besides coyotes?
Yes, so it's any creature. Now, that was actually something that was in Vermont, other than, I think, like mice and rats and things like that. But other than that, you're not allowed to just go and kill a large number of animals for no purpose.
Or any number.
Yes, yes, in theory. It's just not, it's very difficult to enforce because of all the loopholes that exist. But yes, you're not technically allowed to go off your property and just kill an animal for the sake of killing. You have to say you're going to use the meat, use the hide, use the fur, something like that.
Well, wasn't there an effort to make regulation that you had to keep dogs within sight or within some kind of distance from you, other than letting them get way
Yes,
far away?
that is something that POW has worked on. I would need to get clarification on exactly what they were trying to change about the legislation. I can ask
And it
about
didn't
that as
happen?
well. No, unfortunately, that has not happened yet. Let me write that down also. Okay. Yes, I remember they were working on that, but that has not happened yet, unfortunately.
Do coyotes mate for life?
Yes, they do. So that I would have to ask about the transients specifically, because I don't know about that, but I know the alpha male and alpha female mate for life. Let me ask about the transients, so that's a very good question. Definitely put your
So
emails
a
down.
transient would only mate with another transient,
Yes,
and whether they become, yeah.
yes. I just don't know if they mate for life. That's a very good question, though. I'm going to ask Jennifer Lovett, who's POW's wildlife biologist. Yes.
I've heard the term coy dog.
Yes.
Can you give any facts about that? And is that a true term? It's always kind of been an issue with me because I don't like it. But anyway.
Oh, so that is just something that people say. It's just a nickname for the coyote.
So it's not a cross, it's not a breeding situation.
No. Coy dog is just a nickname for coyotes. So there's a lot of different names. Coy dogs, song dogs. There's a lot of different nicknames for them. But it's not a different breed.
Are you sure?
I thought it was.
I thought
I
it
know
was
that
too, that
coy
they-
wolves are a completely different species, but I'm pretty sure coy dogs aren't.
So I guess it's possible it is. I know that here in Vermont people just use it to refer to coyotes. That's just what people, it's another word for coyotes. But let me write it down in some places if it is its own thing.
Yeah. My sister did a lot of research on that.
Yeah.
Wanted to include that.
Interesting. Okay.
And she, I don't know where, she found it, but
That's really interesting. Yeah, definitely. I will ask Jennifer about that as well, because I would be very interested to hear it. My understanding was it's just one of the nicknames that people have.
Sounds like a crossbreed.
Yeah, it could be, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
but isn't that because kind of counter to the idea that they don't really breed with dogs?
Yeah, so it's
Part
not
that's confusing to me.
common.
We're talking about them being a crossbreed, but that dogs and coyotes don't breed, so I don't know.
Right, so they genetically can breed. It's just very unusual that that would happen and that it would result in living pups, but it has happened in the past.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I will definitely ask about that because I don't want to give you wrong information.
Are you going to send us all these wonderful answers?
Yes, if you guys put your email, so for those of you who walked in after it started, there's all these sign-up sheets for Protect Our Wildlife. And if you, I guess if you don't want to be on a mailing list, you can just write on the back of one of these pieces of paper. I'll just provide a list for questions. Let me actually do that. I'll write a list that says questions, and if you want answers to the questions, just write your name and email. And then if you also want to be on the POW mailing list, you can put your email, phone number, name, address, or any or none of the above that you'd like. Yes.
Is there anyone in the legislature or running for office who really is passionate about this, that we could support?
Currently, I would have to ask Brenna. She's the one who would know. I haven't heard of anyone especially passionate about it, but if there is, Brenna would know. So I'm going to add that to the question list because
That's my sense. I write letters or keep hearing, do this, and then I hear, well, no one really cares. I mean, you can,
I
but
talked to Chris Breda.
he doesn't really care.
He has the same residence.
No, he doesn't do it.
So my understanding about Chris Bray is his heart is in the right place, but he's not really willing to go up against the special interest groups and actually pass legislation that would be
That's what I want to know. Is there someone I can support who will?
Yeah, one of the things you can always do is call and write letters to your legislature, because that's huge. Like if every one of you in here figures out who your legislators are in your county, I'm assuming many of you are Addison County, but probably not all, find the legislators in your area, and if you subscribe to POW's mailing list, they do send out emails about updates about legislation that they're pushing. So that's a big thing, and they'll send out an update and say, hey, you should call and support this bill to ban hounding, things like that. So that's a big thing you can do. But in terms of specific candidates, I'm definitely going to ask Brenna, and I'll send that out to anyone who writes their emails. So, good question. Yes?
We have, I guess, about 40 acres of property with meadow and house up the top of the hill, and we hear the coyotes all the time. And we have a dog, a rescue dog, that gets all excited when the coyotes are howling.
Yeah.
I was assuming they were celebrating catching a deer,
Right.
fawn or something. One day the dog was outside when the coyotes started going, and the dog ran into the woods, and I'm thinking, oh no,
Yeah.
and pretty soon the dog came streaking by back up the hill with a coyote or two after him, and they got about to the house, and he was going away past the house.
Yeah.
So they decided, okay, and they trotted back down.
Yeah, they were escorting him back to his home and out of their home.
Big, beautiful creatures compared to this medium-sized brown dog. Mostly hounds, I think.
Yeah.
But it was such a funny thing because all the dogs were racing after me.
Yeah, that's a really
And they just
interesting thing to
escorted her
see.
back when she got up by the house. Okay, that's it. You stay in your yard.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Because yes, they will do that. If you're near their territory or near their pups and they feel threatened, they will chase you off and they will escort you back to where they think you belong. But they weren't trying to kill your dog. They just wanted to out of their space.
It was just, the dog's ears were back.
That's so funny.
Okay, you're up by your yard, then you stay here.
That's a great
Trot it back
story.
down. No racing or anything.
That's a great story. That's awesome. Does anyone else have any other questions or stories you want to share, or comments, or anything at all? Yes.
Does the Vermont Humane Society, are they active in any way with these issues?
So my knowledge is that the humane societies are more geared towards domestic animals rather than wildlife. I would have to look that up to be 100% sure, but I've never seen them really make an initiative for coyotes or anything. They do amazing work, but more focused on domestic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least our local humane society, I don't even think they do much with asking people to keep their cats inside.
Yeah, it's not really their priority. Thank you guys so much for coming. Have a good night. Yeah.
They used to have that in a list of, stuff they do. But I think that it stopped, it curtailed adoption a lot of times. Yeah, so if the cat I even thought, for adoption, this cat likes to be in the nest,
Yeah, I agree. I think in part they're so overloaded, they're constantly so overloaded with cats that they try not to be too picky, and I'm using air quotes for that because I do think it's important, but if they were to control that to that level, they probably wouldn't get enough cats adopted and they wouldn't be able to help as many, so I get where they're coming from, but it is unfortunate for the safety of wildlife and for the cats.
It's healthy.